A very good day to everyone. My name is Architect Manisha Kirti and I'm from Vijayawada. I work as Assistant Professor at Vaishnavi School of Architecture in Vijayawada. So firstly, I would like to thank AFM 2021, which was conducted by UVCT Urban Village Charitable Trust for giving me this opportunity, and also to the organizer of this particular conference, Faculty of Architecture and Acoustics, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. I would like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. And the topic that I'm right now, I wrote a paper on is transformation of a weaver settlement, a case study particularly in Mangalgiri. That is in Andhra Pradesh. It is a weaver settlement and also a pilgrim center town and in Mangalgiri. So in this particular topic, I'm basically talking about how the transformation of weaving spaces had happened from the past 300 centuries and even beyond that. What are the various scenarios and various changes that had led for this kind of change, existential change that had happened over the years, and what is the loss and what are the merits and demerits that had happened both for the industry and also for the weaver communities of Mangalgiri. So basically, vernacular architecture of India. India is a diverse nation from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. We know that from north to east and east to north to south and east to west, there was a wide range of traditional, religion, region, and climatical conditions, including the lifestyles and comfort and safety and occupation changes that generally happen in India, and that had actually blended with a lot of experimentations that were done by our ancestors in many ways possible for their existence, and that had the outcome was a very rich one. We have such a rich culture, such a rich tradition that from the food we eat to the dress we have, to the dress we wear, and to the coffee we drink, to the cot we sleep, everything has its own style, representing its region and also its religious and also its traditional, traditional touch in that. So architecture is also one of the art forms that had such a touch, where vernacular architecture with its own materials and with its own region specific materials and region specific cultures had come up. India is a diverse nation from Kashmir to Kanyakumari with its traditional towns and villages. Each state of India has a variety of culture, tradition, customs, climate, etc. So all these contributed for the rise of various architectural styles. So transformation of these traditional spaces has happened because of various factors, and one of the major factors is basically migration. Migration had made people fled from the villages to these urban areas, which has a wide variety of opportunities, facilities, employment opportunities, and educational opportunities, and also everyone had come up to these cities to earn their bread. And because of that overpopulation, slums had come up, vertical housing had come up, and also the concept of space shortage has happened in the cities, which is still an unsolved phenomena in most of the urban areas around the world, and also in most of the major cities in India as well, which is a known scenario. And the impacts, the after effects or negative impacts that had happened out of this migration is increase in the number of slums, unplanned growth, misuse of resources, fading aesthetics. Definitely the traditionality has completely gone, which we are actually talking about in the coming slides of this paper, and misfunctionality of spaces. So the more dead spaces had come up, more unused spaces had come up, and overcrowded housing communities had happened. Overcrowded housing communities, basically to accommodate a certain set of people or huge number of people in one cubicle of vertical towers, apartment style had come up, where we had completely eliminated, or at least to a major extent, we had eliminated the concept of open spaces. And whatever the 10% or 15% was allotted by the GVOs also, in the GVOs also, is not actually a sufficient open spaces that one can. So the usage of open spaces also had changed through this scenario. So, and coming to the textile industry of India, we know that there are almost uncountable number of textiles that are available, textile varieties that are available in India, and every weave or every textile technique has its own style, its own charm, its own the outcome and its own untold stories. So we are actually going to look into the untold stories that had happened for a various phenomenal drift that had happened in the in the world of fashion or in the world of this traditional industry, and the spaces which are surrounded, or the spaces which also happen to come to an extent uh, in this process will be discussed in the later slides. And Andhra Pradesh and the textile industry, Andhra Pradesh, apart from not only Mangalgiri, there's Pochampalli, Uppada, Venkatgiri, and many, Pedana and Kalamkari, and there are many such known and unknown textile types or fabric types that were there. So out of all, Mangalgiri handlooms in Krishna and Guntur districts are one of the unique type, and it has been even identified by the fashion world, and it has been globalized, but still there's a lot of demand supply shortage that is happening right now. So Mangalgiri in particular, if I have to talk, it's a mandal, it's a pilgrim center, which has the temple of Sri Panakal Narasimha Swami temple on the top of the hill, and Narasimha Swami, Digubar Narasimha Swami temple on the lower foothills of that hill. And these two temples are dated back from 15th century and even before that, even from 10th century. So this is a major pilgrim center. And apart from that, it is one of the major weaving industries in this particular region. And so Mangalgiri, which is a temple town, is also famous for its beautiful Mangalgiri cotton sarees and materials. It's believed that pilgrims who came to offer prayers for these two particular temples, it's a tradition that they have to, they will buy at least one or two sarees, and they will offer it to the god, and then they tie it back at their house. So this clearly emphasizes how much tradition is imbibed in the way when we actually visit any place. We try to get a gift for ourselves. So that itself, we are serving something traditional there. So half of the population in Mangalgiri depends on Mangalgiri weaving, cotton products, and also silk and cotton mixed products, and also silk products. So there's a good legend for this. And Narasimha Swami temple, so they used to either weave, these particular weavers, they used to either weave individually, right from 10th century. They used to either weave individually or as a group of weavers or as a large individual big family also. They used to, some 4 or 5 people in that particular family completely used to devote their lives only for the weaving and selling of this particular fabric. And during Qutub Shahi dynasty in 1596, that is in the 16th century, the region has levied taxes on the handloom sarees. Due to this, most of the weavers fled to the town, which dealt a severe blow in the flourishing handloom industry of the town of Mangalgiri. So this development enabled the rulers to adopt a more favorable attitude with the weavers and reduce the taxes. In short, the pillar is the proof. The inscription stone that is there in the Narasimha Swami temple that you can see in this particular image, Galigopuram, so there's an inscription stone there, which is definitely not allowed to take a photo. So that particular inscription stone in which this particular scenario was inscribed, and it's a part of the town. So the pillar is proof that Mangalgiri handloom industry has been part of the town for more than 5 centuries. So the recorded one. So the recorded data is from the past 5 centuries. And during Qutub Shahi's rule in 1611, and the Britishers took the permission to trade Mangalgiri. From then, the Mangalgiri cotton products have been exported to other places. So that was the time when British entered in British India in 1611. That was the time, for the first time, the Mangalgiri weaving products had actually crossed the seas, and it has gone to various South Asian countries, and also to UK, Europe, and a few of the European countries, and few of the few other Asian countries like Japan and Russia as well. So due to the severe downfall in the Mangalgiri textile industry, that is in 1940, most of the weavers from nearby villages moved to Mangalgiri and started a union call. So they have to, so in 1940, there was a downfall of, because there was no uncertainty in the freedom movement, and also that was the time where the local master weavers had come up, and master weavers association had been started up. And from then they started employing the weavers who couldn't own a loom, but they can work under these master weavers, and that is when the uplifting of weaving industry actually happened. So before getting into the transitional space, we have to first understand what are the traditional forms of housing that were there in Andhra Pradesh. Manduva house is one type of traditional house with a front yard, a large central courtyard, and a backyard house. So it has 4 to 5 rooms, and it is a and it is basically ground floor, and up to 18 to 20 rooms are there. Used to be there in one if it is a 2-story house. So front yard is used for drying and also for starching. So there used to be a separate dyeing and starching shed, and for also for washing purposes. So that particular open space and semi-open space of this particular shed are basically used for these purposes of the weaving to get the cloth ready, get it spinned for the weaving. So the weaver can use the spinned cloth on thread only when it is dyed, dried, and again starched, and again dried, and again spinned, and again rolled, and then again dried, and then spinned, and again, then only it can be given to the weaver. Further, to use it onto the loom. So the veranda in the front portion is basically used to have these looms, 4 to 5 looms, or at least 2 to 3 looms, where the men in the family used to sit in the outdoors, that is the semi-open space of that particular veranda, and they used to sit. So this is the condition when it was in the 15th century and 16th century. So these were the few uh, um, this was part of the primary study that I got to know. And the backyard of the house is more confined to the private purposes of the weaver's family, either for growing veggies or growing some fruits, or for the storage, or maybe, it is like more likely, it is for cultivation, only domestical cultivation. The central courtyard in the house used to act like an conditioning unit of the house, which diffuses the air. And in some cases, the central near to the central courtyard, there used to be one more loom present, uh, which is provisioned for the ladies to sit and weave inside the house. So at that time, the society scenario was completely different. So it is not possible for the women to either go or sit outside and weave for a longer hours. So it used to be more like a private loom, which is used only by the family members and majorly by the women of that particular family. So this is a plan. This is an illustrational plan of Manduva house of 16th and 17th centuries in Mangalgiri, how a weaver's house used to be provisioned. So this is the main entrance. So this is the main entrance of the site. One second. So this is the main entrance of the house. So the front part, it is more likely like a small seater, which is provisioned on both sides of the main entrance. That is nothing but called as Arugu in local language in Telugu. So Arugu is basically used as a gathering point either in the evenings or the mornings for the ladies or for the people of this particular family to sit in the. So it is more like a streetscape that the house is actually offering for the people to gather, rejoice, and even chat and all. So once you get in, there's a huge front yard that is available here. So towards one side, it is starching and dyeing shed. And this entire front yard is basically for drying and starching. So on one side, it is dyeing and drying shed. And on the other sides, wherever the sunlight availability is there in abundance, that particular area is given for drying. So the thread has to get it has to be properly dried. So there used to be poles. There used to be poles on either sides where the huge thread hangs, and on that these threads are kept for drying. And this is the veranda part, which is again a semi-open space, which has at least 4 looms. And these 3 to 4 looms, which were used either by the weavers who come and weave, or majorly by the joint family. Since it was a joint family system, not just the father, but also his sons and the father's brother, everyone used to sit and occupy in the same occupy themselves in the same occupation. So the looms are present mostly in this. So this veranda not only acts as a gathering point for the family members or for the outsiders. It is mostly like a living room. It is also a selling point where people used to come, take and go, look at the weave, select whatever they want, or decide the design that they wanted to have, or the color in those days, and then they used to go. So this particular part is not only just for the weaving, drying, dyeing, and starching, but also for selling. And again comes the private part of the house. So it is provision with various rooms like kitchen, living room, puja, and storage for the raw material, and also for the finished material to be for the storing, and a few 2 to 3 bedrooms. And with a huge central courtyard in the middle, which has tulsi plant, which has been kept in a planter, and that is the worshipping area, one of the worshipping area. And that particular space is majorly for the diffusion of air and also for the elements of the light. So abundant lighting and ventilation, air circulation is a must, as there is one more loom within the house. And they used to have one puja room for sure, and every day before working, they have to worship Bhavana Maharshi. Bhavana Maharshi is one person who was actually who had actually got the made cotton out of thread out of the cotton. So he's considered as one of the major idols for them, gods for them. And all around, the toilet has been generally moved away from the house, and from the kitchen there's a small utility. And all over the backyard and side yard, this particular house has been self-sufficiently planted with various fruit trees, vegetable plants, and various other trees all over, which they don't have to majorly go to the market and get. And one well is usually provided within the house for the irrigational purposes. And coming to the section of this house, in this section you can clearly see. So as you go, this is the dyeing and drying starching shed, and once you get here, the weaving spaces are there in the veranda. And then comes the internal part of the house, which has the central courtyard. So you can see the beautiful central courtyard, which is two to 3 step down, and which has tulsi kota in the middle, that is the tulsi plant. And then comes the bedroom, and these are the backyard. Though this actually shows the typical image of an Indian house, it has its own difference because of the usage of the space. The usage of the space is different, and definitely it is not it is not similar to the regular houses that anyone can have, even with the regular mandapa house. So it has looms within it. It needs to have a lot of open spaces for dyeing, drying, starching, and spinning again. And it should have one more loom within the house, and also storerooms for storing the final product. So coming to the elevation is so simple. It's very simple, but it is very much elegant enough. It shows how simple the rangoli patterns of the houses are used, and the brackets were a bit, the brackets of the house were a bit, the pillars were a bit articulated, majorly articulated. And landscape also plays a major role. The type of plant material that they're implementing, it is not a design landscape. Definitely it's a unplanned landscape, but still it shows the regionality, the region culture within the house, the tradition within the house. And so, and the weavers in 18th and 19th century, as I told, because of the leaving of the taxes and all, few of the weavers had left this particular industry, and they had moved to the nearby villages for various other businesses or for works. So at that particular time in 18th and 19th century, the sizes of the rooms and the open area started to thin up. So the central courtyard, the concept of central courtyard has been completely removed, whereas the house used to have either 1 or 2 looms, and a small dyeing and starching shed. And the front yard is majorly used for a thinner front yard. A thinner front yard is majorly used for the drying area. So the house is confined to maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms, or sometimes only 1 bedroom, 1 small living room, and a small kitchen. So the semi-open space, this veranda is used for this. So in this particular section, if you see, the house has been very much simply kept. No complicated things were done. But if you can see the checked pattern over here, that is nothing but the wooden grill, which was which is basically designed to allow some sort of light, because the temperatures outside are very harsh. So definitely, to some extent, they have to allow the light. So they had used this. this type of thing. And this thing has been, even this kind of implementation we can still find in the present day worksheds that were constructed by the master weavers. And the elevation had become much simpler. It merely looks like a small hut. So the changing era of British architecture, when that was when colonial architecture has been introduced to India. Mangalgiri was also one of the areas which has taken its impact, and most of it has simple detailing. The roofs were flat, and less open spaces were given, and plain surfaces were given with less detailing. And new styles has been adopted in this process, both in terms of construction and also in terms of architectural detail implementation. So the traditional way of possessing the vernacularity has been completely, majorly taken another drift. So it has completely subsided. And in that process, the central courtyards were gone, the verandas were also gone. And also when master weavers role had come up at that particular time, these master weavers has made sure that to make this particular traditional weaving techniques survive, and also to safeguard the weavers of that many unemployed weavers. They started giving employments, and they started and when Britishers had come up, that was the time where they introduced artificial coloring. So that was the time they started artificial dyeing, and that was the time where this the natural way of dyeing, the concept has been completely removed. And from 1904, when Guntur district was formed, making Mangalgiri as a part of district due to migration and development in Mangalgiri, the houses were constructed taking available spaces as a consideration. So space availability has also become a major consideration at the same point. And the master weavers used to accommodate these weavers who used to come as a wage workers every day. They were accommodated in a workshed. And those worksheds were not at all given with proper amenities except the loom. The loom, they have to work almost for 12 to 13 hours a day, and they were paid less. At the same time, they were given very less amenities, with no toilets almost, and there were no storerooms. There were no spaces to properly sit and spin. But somehow this particular tradition had survived. Maybe that is because of some kind of belief within the weavers that whatever the condition it was, they have to do justice for their motherly profession. So many poor weavers and the workers from 1942 moved to worksheds, closing their weaving looms at their house. So this was the time the house didn't much get differentiated from a regular weaver, from a normal person house to a regular house. So that was when there was a major drift in the way how the weaver's house has been seen. This is a illustration of how a regular master weavers houses. So the master weavers house also, they had closed up these veranda spaces, and they were converted into selling areas, which has vertical storage areas, and they have their own living within that. So as you get in, there are merely setbacks or rules followed. So this particular area, whatever you see, the selling space is basically a veranda which has been converted into a room. And and this particular area, it doesn't have any architectural sense. It is more or less look like a regular 2 BHK, and the living and dining spaces in the private master bedrooms and toilets were accommodated as per a regular 2 BHK, and then a small kitchen and a utility, and all around setback which has been followed. So there's no architectural sense that these houses generally possess. And these are the few photos which shows the present scenario. So here, if we see, the roads are so narrow, the street, but the concept of Arugu has been still being followed in most of the houses. So this is a small seater, and living spaces of the master weaver's house converted to selling areas. So these are the selling areas. This was the time. These were the photos which I had personally gone to this Mangalgiri, and I had clicked them. And the weavers had completely and there are no looms attached to these weavers' houses, as they already accommodated the weavers in the workshops. And you can see the dyeing how the fabric is being dyed and dried. And typical workshed at a Mangalgiri. So you can see a typical workshed at a Mangalgiri. you can see this check jali pattern, the crisscross jali pattern, which is done in wood for elements of the light, natural ventilation, which is generally poor. And the roof doesn't have any regular traditional tiling. This has aluminum sheets on top of that, which is again not creating any kind of comfortable microclimatical conditions within these worksheds to the weavers. And the open spaces are barely unused since the dyeing and drying has been done somewhere and the starching has been done somewhere outside the city. And if you see, this is the typical condition of the weaver of workshed, and these are pit looms. They have to sit just with a small mat and on a small mat, and they'll be working like this for hours. And even they don't even have proper storage spaces, and they tie these spin cloths to the roof itself. So this is how they store. And the pit looms inside, you can see a number of pit looms, at least 30 to 40 pit looms in a very small typical shed like this. It has been accommodated, like it has been overly accommodated, and there is barely any space for the cloth to be stretched. So there's no space for the cloth to fold the cloth also. So these are the images which shows the present condition of how business is being run at Master Weaver's House and worksheds and narrow streets of Mangalgiri. So personally, what I feel is generally as an architect, we tend to create spaces where we are not compromising at the traditionality, but we are not even leaving behind the contemporary techniques or contemporary. So our roots are very intact. We have to follow the rules, but at the same time, we have to believe the roots that where we come from. So maybe we have to go to simpler facades using various material variations, wide open spaces. More open spaces should be given for the weaver to come and sit, to come and rejoice, then have a good time and then go back. So the space where he is working has to be much work friendly. It should be like one should be able to give him a work friendly environment rather than a confused and a suffocated environment. And existing transitional spaces, as like we have to adopt more transitional spaces as a design adaptation. And by bringing back the forgotten and abandoned architectural spaces and styles of Mangalgiri, we can sustain the culture and tradition of the temple town structure. So the local architectural motifs has to be implemented. So the space where we are working actually plays a major role for our upliftment and also for the outcome of the work that we generally should. The quality has to improve, so that then only we are doing a good justice to the weaver. And there should be more sort of design field or the fashion field that has to get integrated with the weavers and has to work on many experimentations and many adaptations and many implementations has to be done. That is then when a new product comes up, it will be globalized in a much faster and a much better way. So there should be an introduction of design field or the fashion field also with these weavers. That is what gives that will give a good boost to the weavers also and also to the fashion industry. So it should something go in hand in hand. So for all this, they need a proper architectural space, which led the weaver also to do some research, which lets the weaver also to experiment on various forms of weaving and forms of dyeing and forms of methods in implementing the his thoughts. Thank you.